Well, U.S. President Trump is lashing out again at what he calls the politicized judges in the country's court system. The Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals is considering whether or not to uphold a lower court's temporary restraining order on Mr. Trump's controversial travel ban. Now, Trump used his executive order powers and declared a total ban on entry into the U.S. for citizens of 7 countries in the Middle East and North Africa. Now, opponents say the order amounts to a ban on Muslims. Some say the ban applies to countries in which there are no Trump business connections. Here's what the U.S. president told a meeting in Washington, D.C. today of American sheriffs and police chiefs.
It's not like, again, a bad high school student would understand this. Anybody would understand this. Suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens as immigrants or non-immigrants, or impose on the entry of aliens. I listened to a panel of judges, and I'll comment on that. I will not comment on the statements made by certainly one judge. And I don't ever want to call a court biased, so I won't call it biased. And we haven't had a decision yet. But courts seem to be so political, and it would be so great for our justice system if they would be able to read a statement and do what's right. And that has to...
Well, that is U.S. President Donald Trump there. Well, his travel ban does not include Saudi Arabia, but it puts the country in an uncomfortable position. Saudi Arabia is seen as a leader of the Muslim world, and it is also a U.S. ally. There's a lot to talk about here. I'm happy to welcome to the day Her Royal Highness Princess Basmah Bint Saud bin Abdul Aziz of Saudi Arabia. She's the youngest daughter of the country's second king. She has a Syrian mother. She was educated in the UK. She's an advocate of good governance, reform, and human rights. Princess Basmah, it's good to have you with us on the day.
Thank you, Brent.
Welcome.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
I have to ask you, what did you think when you heard about U.S. President Trump's travel ban? Being a Muslim coming from Saudi Arabia, what went through your mind?
Well, actually, it's not unexpected. I mean, the president has been really lobbying for that since day one, so it was not unexpected. But choosing those countries were really, I think it was maybe not random, but definitely they were very well chosen, very well, looked at as countries who, come out as immigration, terrorism, and all sorts of home security issues.
Has that been discussed in Saudi Arabia? I'll just ask you, has it been discussed in Saudi Arabia that Saudi Arabia is not on the list of countries for the ban, considering how many terrorists that have been in the United States have come from Saudi Arabia?
Actually, thinking about, the whole scene of terrorism and so on, I can trace only the 9/11 as, something that Saudi Arabia has been, fingered at. Yeah. But, I mean, when you look at ISIS and all the new terrorism picture in the world, it really comes from Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and the countries that are not actually at peace. Mm-hmm. So they have revolutions, and there's so many interacted, issues over there, while Saudi Arabia has been counteracting terrorism and has been helping the U.S. and the international community with an anti-terrorism programs.
So you don't see the ban as a ban on Muslims?
Definitely not.
Okay.
Definitely. I mean, it's not what Mr. Trump has been lobbying since before. Right. Yeah. So the result is a completely different result, and when I see how things are progressing, and his phone call with King Salman.
But it's interesting you say that. It's interesting you say that, though, because in the United States, what we're hearing is a lot of people there see it as an attempted ban on Muslims?
I think it's more media than it is fact. I think it's more targeted, at the home security level, where terrorists are coming from now, and where is the danger is coming from now, not what it was before. Before it was Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, the whole Saudi Arabian image. Now it has shifted into another specter and another platform. And I think this is what the President Donald Trump has been looking at, and his home security minister.
I mentioned earlier that you have a Syrian mother. You know Syria. You're probably aware of yesterday's report by Amnesty International about the slaughterhouse of Saidnaya prison.
Yes, I do.
Do you see in the foreseeable future any chance of peace returning to Syria?
It depends. How do you define peace?
Well, are you satisfied with what Saudi Arabia is doing or isn't doing to push for peace?
Well, it's not actually being happy more than being an observer. I'm a humanitarian observer, and the whole spectrum of the Syrian war has not been a very humanitarian affair by itself on a global level, not only on a Saudi Arabian level. And Saudi Arabia is one of the global governments in the world that has been involved in the crisis. So it's more or less, I'm not happy at all with anything that is actually concerning Syria, not only because my mother's family still live there until now, but it's a humanitarian disaster that nobody has actually looked at very profoundly, and how it's going to be developing in the future. So there is a lot of, loss of strategic thinking in the political scene that was misjudged. And I think we have a disaster on our hands that is not going to end soon.
I have to ask you a little bit about your own personal story. I mean, which is fascinating, particularly for people outside of Saudi Arabia looking at you. You're a divorcee, a successful businesswoman, and you're pushing for reform in your country, but you don't live in Saudi Arabia. You live in London. Why is that? Would you be in danger? Could you be the woman we see tonight if you stayed in your country?
I want to update you. I have moved back to Saudi Arabia.
Oh, really?
3 years ago.
Okay. But you still have your place in London, is that correct?
I just came from London and
good.
Paris, definitely.
Okay, all right, good.
No, I moved back to Saudi Arabia, and after King Salman has taken over, after the death of King Abdullah, has even promoted my writings and helped in bringing me out and to the scene and registering my fourth way law theory in King Fahd library.
But you can go back to Saudi Arabia and live, and yet we still hear cases such as the case of Raif Badawi, the blogger who was sentenced to 10 years, 1,000 lashes, just for being critical
So true.
of Islam.
So true.
Why doesn't the Saudi government at least allow a little bit of light to come into that darkness?
Can I shed some light on this? Raif Badawi issue was actually 8 years ago. And the sentence has been actually performed around 2 years ago. And that was prior to King Salman coming into the throne. So what I'm saying is that there is a progress in Saudi Arabia and in the human rights issue in Saudi Arabia. It's been looked at more seriously than before. And since it has signed a lot of treaties in the UN, now it's actually performing on a better level and on a higher level and more conscientious level than before. Raif Badawi, again, issue has been dealt in different courts. And as we know that the Board of Vice, Religious Vice, has been changed into a different board. It has actually gone under the Ministry of Interior umbrella, and now today I have actually read in the news that is going to be joining the Islamic Reform Institute.
So am I hearing?
Yes.
Am I hearing between the lines from you that there's reason to hope that even for the Badawi family, that there may be reason to hope that there will be a happy ending?
I think there is a lot of hope there, and I think there's going to be a very good happy ending, and a lot of other also issues in Saudi Arabia that are concerned, the human rights are going to be in progress. Definitely.
I know his wife will be happy to hear that. She's been on the show. I'm sure she'll be happy to get that message. Final question for you. You're in Berlin. Will you be attending the Berlin Film Festival, some of the festivities?
Yes, I might. And I'm also invited to the Bulgaria night tomorrow. So we'll be enjoying the Berlin hospitality and definitely looking forward actually to interact with the community, which I already began today with questioning and lots of socializing.
Well, Princess Basmah, thank you very much for taking the time to be on the day, and thank you for bringing the message that you brought with you tonight as well. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.